Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for April 2022. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive life coach, and a co-host of these Fireside Chats. And I'm here today with Lacy Frazer, my co-host, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life coach and consciousness educator today. I want to thank our listeners for joining us. Our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation is to increase self-awareness, personal empowerment, conscious communication, transformation, and freedom in people worldwide through our good vibes broadcasting and consciousness teachings. We believe that these conversations are the education, and we thank you for joining us. If you are inspired by our Good Vibes broadcasts and want to pay it forward, we invite you to make a donation through our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can also support our mission and our broadcast by visiting our shop on bonfire.com and purchasing some great designs on a variety of apparel. You can find the link to our shop at bonfire.com on our website, and we hope to have some new designs soon. Lastly, I want to thank our amazing donors who support us, our vision, and our mission so we can continue to grow and create shows, new podcasts, and new inspirations for a world so ready for positive change. Much appreciation to our supporters for your generous donations and your positive energy. And so, without further ado, welcome everyone and welcome Lacy.
Hi, Marie. It is wonderful to be here today. And very exciting because we're talking about our final stage and wrapping up, a year-long journey together with respect to talking about the hero's journey. So
right?
It's just awesome to be here.
It's awesome to be here. We're coming full circle in our conversations about Joseph Campbell's 12 stages of the hero's journey. And once again, we're going to delve a little deeper into the journey that we talk about, which is the rising hero within. And so we're going to be spotlighting today his 12th stage, known as the return with the Elixir. And I just want to talk about that a little bit to introduce the concept, because we talked last month about the resurrection, right?
Right.
And so there were a lot of deep insights in that. If people want to go back into the archives, we've brought this conversation to life in these Fireside Chats podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's amazing to me that we began this journey in April of 2021 with the call to adventure, which is the first stage. And we are now rounding it out, obviously 12 months later, with the 12th stage of the hero's journey called Return with the Elixir. And I think, one thing I want to mention to you as a reminder and our listeners is that it's how we sort of do this month to month is we know this hero's journey very well on a personal level.
Yeah.
And we do our research and we look online and in books to see how other people talk about the hero's journey. And obviously Joseph Campbell talks about it, very in depth. And then there are a lot of other people, especially Hollywood writers, who use the hero's journey as kind of a infrastructure for many of the stories on screen. So I just want to let our listeners know that we do a lot of our own research, but then we talk about and we bring in our own experience, our own very real life experience of our own hero's journey throughout the discussion. So it's sort of a combination of both.
Right.
I just think that's an important thing to mention.
Yeah, and it's multi-layered, isn't it? There's
Yes.
there's a multi-layered richness of other people's insights and our insights and our personal experiences, and then the ways that people write these stages into stories, like the myth of the hero's journey, to bring it to life in people's lives. And not everybody watches movies and reads books and realizes that that's them. Right?
Right.
But that's also part of what you're saying, Lacy, is that there's a lot of people tapped into this wisdom that Joseph Campbell put into this nice package of these stages, that we could actually have a language. We always talk about the language. He gave us the language for what was already happening inside us.
Absolutely.
And I think many of us find this fascinating, and writers and the storytellers, right, in film and authors throughout the centuries have been using this formula. But Joseph Campbell, in his time and his day, really brought it to life where he gave us the language in very succinct ways to go broader and deeper with it, to have conversations like this, but also to apply it in our very own lives.
Yeah, and I think why do people go to the movies? They think they're going to the movies to be entertained, and they're just watching a story,
right?
But the truth is I believe people go to the movies at least at a subconscious level. They go because they want to connect to the story because it's their story, but maybe they've not acknowledged that it's their story.
Right. I think that's where people, as you evolve inside yourself and you grow to a deeper layer or version of yourself, you start to realize that everything has meaning. And I think people start to, when they cross the threshold into the journey, they start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm that character. Oh my gosh, I identify with that story, right? Or I identify with that challenge. And we start to realize that we can learn about ourselves in the stories of everyone around us. Absolutely. That everything has meaning. So at first people may be going for simple entertainment, but as you start to realize maybe it's not just for entertainment, maybe it's something for the psyche and the soul to grow a little deeper.
Yes.
To have something awaken inside you. And that's a lot of our podcasts here at Fireside Chats and certainly Good Vibes Broadcasting. That's what we're doing, is we're supporting that awakening and rising hero within. So it's important to say that today, especially, we have some things to share from other websites. Some we actually grabbed the names, but we were searching and doing a whole bunch of things, and now we're not exactly quite sure where all of it came from. But, it's similar universal energy. It's universal principles, and it's things that Joseph Campbell has talked about.
It's a universal story.
It's a universal story.
Right.
Exactly. So we're going to credit the sites that we did make note of, and we just want to say we thank the authors of some of these other sites if we're talking about some other things. We're not exactly quite sure where that came from, but we thank everybody putting in their insights to bring the story to life so humanity can realize that this is their story as well.
Yes.
We're all doing this, right? And we are passionate about this.
Yes.
And this is the core of the Fireside Chats, at least, broadcasts here
Yes.
at Whole Soul School and Foundation. So, without further ado, Lacy, I wanted to share just some insights from a website that we've referenced before. It's called goalcast.com, where they're talking about the hero's journey. And the writer shares this about the return with the Elixir Stage, the 12th stage of the hero's journey. Following the final battle, the hero finally returns home. By now, personal transformation is complete. They're returning home a different person. Having faced indescribable hardship, the hero returns with added wisdom and maturity. The elixir is the treasure they've returned with, ready to share with the ordinary world. This could be a sense of hope or freedom, or even a new perspective to assist those originally left behind. And I love this next part. This writer at goalcast.com says, the hero has a new level of self-awareness, seeing the ordinary world through fresh eyes. They've left internal conflict behind. They have an understanding that things will never be the same, but that the hero's journey was a part of their destiny. And then comes the ultimate prize, a final reconciliation, an acceptance from the community, celebration, or redemption. Whatever the prize is, there are three elements: change, success, and proof of the journey. And so there is this returning home, right? There's already this personal triumph in the resurrection, right? And all that entailed for the hero. But I think there's something that comes into play here, Lacy, that there's this, someone was talking about that they return a force of change, a force for change, right? And bringing healing and wholeness to society at large. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, where what makes this different. It's not just when the hero returns with the elixir, right? That part of the journey is not just about them. It's about what they bring to elevate humanity as a whole or something, right? Their whole community. It touches lives bigger than just their own.
Yeah, the elixir, I think it's important to kind of talk about what the elixir really represents. And you've done a nice job of kind of bullet pointing what's happening at this final stage, right? And I'm always the big picture, the summarizer, and I'm not going to summarize all the stages, but what I will say is we have to remember that our hero has faced a final battle, and our stage prior to this is the resurrection, where they have faced near death, they've survived it, and they kind of have in so many words been reborn and transformed into this kind of new human being. And they're returning home, like you said, with the treasure that maybe it might be the treasure that's considered the elixir. It might be a physical treasure. It might be an emotional treasure, a spiritual treasure. But the common thread is that the hero is actually the treasure. Because all of the changes and transformation that have taken place inside of the hero, inside of us, on whatever level that is, on whatever plane that is, it is the wisdom that has been learned through the transformation that the hero brings back to the ordinary world as this changed person. Right? So it's like the hero's deeds, in a sense, have a multiplying effect on a community, on the ordinary world. And that's really what separates, a hero from just everyone else, because they haven't people maybe step up in their community to do A, B, or C, but the hero who's gone on a journey has truly transformed, gathered the rewards, shifted their internal selves, and now they are coming back into the ordinary world, and they are bringing what they have learned to help other people. And one person said, and I really like this from a website called The Right Practice, WRITE. They said, the hero expands beyond their own existence.
Wow.
I mean, that's powerful. Yeah. And they bring that expansion into their surrounding world. They bring hope, life, purpose into other people's ordinary lives where it once had been lost.
Right. There's something so profound when they are the living expression of that expansion. And most people are trapped still in their ordinary worlds. But when you see someone living their gifts, having gone on a journey, it's not necessarily something in your consciousness, but we all can detect, we pick up on something, that something about this person is different. And I want to be around that. If they're giving a talk, I want to go to the talk. Right? If they're going to be in an interview, I want to hear what they're saying. We want to pay attention to what they're sharing because they've gone beyond the confines of the boxes you might presently be living in.
Yes.
And you want to know what they uncovered, those secrets of the Holy Grail. How did they figure it out? What did they do? Right?
And why do you want to know? Because you're on your own journey. At some level. And you are realizing that you're going through experiences or one experience or something really, really big, and you are looking for language, you are looking for answers, you are looking for support, you are looking for what is it that changed that person that could help you. It's why we go to the movies, right? To refer back to that.
Right. Well, it's why we buy like self-help books.
Right.
It's because somebody's put into words something that might just help you. And that's why we seek these things out. But just by our paying attention, we can be engaging our own hero's journey versus somebody who's the victim of your life. You become more the creator of your life when you're simply listening for where that energy of a risen hero is, not for the adulation. That's important to say.
Yes.
What you just said about that quote about that lived expansion, which was really profound, right? And you're saying that they are the gift. They bring this back to their community and humanity. It's like the best of all worlds where the hero itself, when they're returning with this elixir, with the gifts inside them of all that they learned, all the lessons, all the challenges that they triumphed over, right? There's something that is a gift unto itself. It's like they bring their presence, which presence for our listeners, right? Presence. They're bringing their presence, which is a present, a gift into the present time of somebody else. And that's when the rising hero's journey and this return with the elixir really does this expansive, exponential work in sometimes wordless ways, because sometimes it's just the presence of somebody. They've had an experience. They've triumphed over something extraordinary. And just by listening to their stories, it's why I think people have been so captivated with their televisions for the last 100+ years, right? With that innovation and that invention, because we could experience the characters and the mythology. It could come to life on the screen in a kind of way. And for those people who are still trapped in their own ordinary worlds, or if you're somewhere in the journey and you're looking for a new kind of fortification, we've talked about the mentor. It doesn't have to be somebody you're directly having a conversation with. The mentor can be in a book. It can be in a quote. It can be in a scroll from some other time, some other century, right? But we're looking to glean those jewels, those breadcrumbs for our own journeys, because we're going to go through all of this ourselves. In some way, form, or fashion, we are all in the rising hero's journey, even if we haven't even heard the call yet and we're still in the ordinary world, right?
So, Marie, let's take this just to a personal level, kind of bring in our own experiences, which we've periodically talked about over the last 12 months. And I'm just going to succinctly give our listeners an example when I talk about myself and what you and I have been through in our personal life and the kind of many heroes' journeys that we've been on. But we had a very, very big one that we've referenced many times. And really what I want to say when I think about the return with the Elixir is that through my own personal transformation and my own hero's journey over about a 7 to 10 year period of time, I returned to the prison kind of at a time when I felt very transformed, and I had learned so many lessons, and I had wisdom that I had gained through that process, and I took it into the prison, and I ran groups with men, and I took them on this year-long journey. And it really was their hero's journey within this room in the prison over a year's period of time. But I was bringing sort of my elixir into that ordinary world. Right? Into their ordinary world, back to both my ordinary world and their ordinary world. I was expanded beyond my own existence through my own hero's journey. And then I brought the hope and the wisdom to these men in prison. And to be honest, I feel like I'm still doing that today in the work I'm doing today. And I feel like it is definitely my life's purpose forever to help and guide and coach people in their hero's journey using my own self as the elixir to some degree. And I will say, I know you are that too and have a purpose in that too. But I also want to say that I am not saying that I'm always in a hero's journey. That's how I think about myself. So it's not just a one and done.
People might mistake the images because there's a lot of things you can, if you look up the hero's journey in Joseph Campbell, you'll see people have developed the map and there's a circle, right? And it's not that you start at the beginning and you go to the end and that's it.
One time in your life with one big situation.
It's a spiraling in a good way. It's a layering upon the lessons that you are gleaning, and now you're more apt and ready for the next one. Because when the invitation comes the second time and the third time and the fourth time, you understand that it's yours to do, and you actually know that the elixir is in there for you, like a new elixir.
Yes.
A more expanded gift than you'd had before.
So when the next challenge comes, right, the next ordeal, so to speak,
right,
you are more prepared than you were before the last.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And I think when this becomes your language, when this becomes your journey, this becomes your life, and it becomes your language, you actually start to feel a sense of excitement of like, oh, I sense another adventure is coming to find me, right? And it can be unpleasant circumstances. We've had many more spirals and layers of this journey since our initial one, right? But I want to go back to what you said first, is that before our first call to adventure that happened to both of us simultaneously, right? That is the case for some people, and sometimes it's a solo journey. Sometimes it's just for you. But for us, it was a simultaneous invitation for each of us to go on our own journeys, which were separate and distinct to each of us. But it was a common circumstance that led us there.
Yes.
It was one invitation for both of us, but we each had to accept in our own ways and go on the journey. And we did journey it differently. That's still a fact today. What you journeyed and where you grew and where you went to inside yourself, it's not that we were identical twins, carbon copies of each other, going through the same journey. We both received the invitation at the same time, but we both had a different journey with it. And then when you say that you took this into the prison system, you went on your own journey, and then you took those lessons, you brought the elixir there. Prior to that, you were a psychologist practicing as a clinical psychologist in the federal prison system, maybe having a little inkling of something more, but this really was something that transformed you and that brought a higher level of awareness of what your purpose was, even in the prison as a psychologist. You were not even necessarily defining yourself fully as just a psychologist at that point. Something inside you had changed. There's some writing from goalcast.com where they were sharing, following a transformative psychic process, there's an understanding of what is within your control. The ordinary world may have many elements that remain the same, but this is accompanied by a realization that when you change, so does your reality. Previous modes of thinking may be replaced as bridges are built with your past, giving opportunity for a renewed approach to life. I feel like you came to work after, as that was unfolding and you were coming out your own resurrection process, you came back to the ordinary world of your job, but with new lenses, right? Being that force for change and knowing that you had this renewed approach to being a psychologist in that role, right? And that's one of the ways that all of this came to life for you. And then it became multi-layered because as the men, because it was a federal prison for men, when they came through your classes and went on this journey with you, they too did the same thing. And then many of them did not necessarily, the ending of the group that you led them through didn't always end with their release date from prison. They had gone through your group and had changed, and they were still in their ordinary world of still being in the confines of the prison walls. And yet they had set themselves free on many levels. So they went on their own hero's journeys. Like I get chills whenever I feel the impact, the ripples that happen with the elixir, right? With these gifts we bring with our presence. It's us. Right? Yes. It's not the sword. It's not all the jewels that we might have acquired, or you know what I mean?
Or accolades. It's not about accolades or achievements or pats on the back.
Because I think that's part of us growing beyond that. We've grown beyond even the need for those things. Right. And often people might like hearing this. When you go through this journey, jewels and abundance and wealth and goodness and blessings sometimes become your experience. Not because you're some hero that needs to be adored by everybody else's egoic lenses that they need to bow down to you, but because you've become the vibration and the energy of somebody who's transcended the need for that. And you're so in this place of kind of this expanded grace. It's hard to describe, but you know who you are. And when you know who you are, blessings of almost every kind begin to find you because you've done the work to be the magnet of them. And yet when you finally are the magnet of them, you don't need it anymore. The irony of the hero's journey also is in there too. But we have the perspective that growing and expanding and going on adventures and learning more about yourself as not only the hero of your own journey, the rising hero of your own journey, the risen hero of your own journey, but the expanded version of yourself growing, that is the elixir. Growth is the elixir that we all seek. It's the marrow of our lives. And that's an energy that people can detect, even if they are deep in the unconscious world, deep in the ordinary world. Somebody walks into a room with that kind of energy and everybody's watching that. Everybody's watching, not because they might think initially, oh, I want what they're having from an ego place. Maybe that's what first captivates their attention. But eventually, as they're invited on their own journey, we transcend what the ego wants and needs, and we become this really stellar, graceful, humble, incredible version of ourselves, and we will learn more lessons. If we didn't completely clear the ego in adventure 1, we will have another adventure to go deeper into that. Or maybe it'll be the 10th one that we finally clear that particular dragon. So I love looking at my life as a multi-layered, multi-dimensional adventure. It's not just linear. You don't go from point A to point B and say they started here, they climbed the mountain, they came back down the mountain, and that's it, end of story. No, that's the way you see it, you've missed the point of our podcasts, right? And you should maybe go back. We invite you to go back and listen again. So this is all to bring to life. You did this in the prison. You brought your elixir there. That's where it started for you. It activated your role as a teacher and a coach inside, the role as a psychologist, but you were an expanded version of any psychologist that I know, right?
Yes,
you
yes.
are not your typical psychologist at that point in time.
Right.
That's when you are kind of like the risen hero psychologist, where you're bringing the elixir back to people, anybody that's ready for it. And there were certainly plenty of people in that prison complex, right? The confines of those walls that weren't interested. Not everybody rose to the invitation.
Right.
And even that, you put out a poster inviting people for an information session. You might have had, I don't know how many people. Do you even remember for that first group how many people came to the information session?
Oh, I think like 13 came and 11 stayed in the group,
Right.
But
And
by
then,
the end...
By the end, and the changes that people witnessed in them over the course of the year, what was it like the second year, the second information session?
Oh, there were probably 40 men,
Right.
and I could only accept 15. And then by the end, there was...
Right, you had wait lists,
Yeah.
is what happens.
Yeah.
Right? And that's
and
something
you know why
else.
and the reason it was not because of me that those interests grew. It was what's fascinating and what speaks to the ripple effect of all of this is the initial group of men that went through. I did this for 8 years with 8 different groups. The initial group of men applied it, transformed it, did what they did, went on their own hero's journey, and men watched those men change
Right.
and transform and said, "Ooh, I want what they're having." And so then they came the next year, and the ripple went out like water on a pond. It went out, and people were witnessing the hero's journey and the transformation and the energetic shifts, and it was just phenomenal. And that's how this works.
The presence is the gift. It's the energy in the people in this journey that is also the invitation that gets extended
Yes.
to the witnesses of their journey.
Yes.
They witness that energy. They witness the presence. They witness the change that's beginning to show up. They might even watch somebody struggle and suffer and go through some challenges of the hero's journey. And they might, while they're witnessing, they're like, oh man, I'm glad that's not me, right? Because that's what the ego's thinking, oh, better them than me. And then you see them go through and come out the other side. And then that person is saying, maybe I should sign up for that class. Maybe I should check out that group.
Well, and one of the things you just said that really I wanted to expound on is once we've gone through one or two of these heroes' journeys within ourselves, we've talked about this before, we can become a mentor for others.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's been said to me before that I really think you and I do very well is because we have been through several quote unquote ordeals. We've been through several battles and inside of ourselves and reaped rewards and brought back the elixir, so to speak. We can sit with people. We can sit with people who are in the midst of their ordeal, in the midst of their tornado, in the midst of their trauma, in the midst of their dark night of the soul, we can sit with them and we can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything really is as it should be. We can sit with uncomfortable emotion. We can help guide them through a dark tunnel. We can sit with that. Not everybody can sit with that, but a true hero can, because they've already been through it at some level themselves, and they have resurrected themselves through it. They can sit with others who are going through it without attachment, without judgment, and with love. And I think that that's something you and I do very well.
I think so. And we've done a really good job today, I think, of bringing to life your experience where your first elixir bringing happened. You brought it to the prison. There was this nudge that you felt that, there's something that you can't keep it to yourself. This is something that needs to be shared.
I used to say, not only could I not keep it to myself, I felt a responsibility. I felt kind of what they talk about, a lot of people who write about this, is they talk about, bringing hope, life, purpose into other people's ordinary lives, in their ordinary world where it once had been lost. And I felt a certain sense of responsibility to bring it.
Well, and what a perfect environment to bring that sense of hope and expansion and possibility. Some people, hope can be a tricky word.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Because hope can be deceptive, but hope can also be real. Hope can also be literally opening and expanding your eyes and your lenses to what is possible for yourself if you go on the journey to transcend any of the limits placed on you, even if literally you're serving a prison sentence and aren't free to leave the premises, right? Many of those men went on to free themselves from themselves in this aspect of their heroes' journeys. We don't know about all of them that have since left prison, and have they continued on their heroes' journeys? Some have, perhaps some haven't. We don't know fully exactly. But the ones that we're in contact with and friends with and connected with still, and who podcast with us and transformation talks, right? And who are involved in Whole Soul School and Foundation in some way, those men are still passing the elixir that they know how to share from their own confidence in themselves, their own strength, their own expansion, that they don't fear the storms. In a world that's gone through some storms in the last couple of years, right? And that's kind of shattered people's sense of what normal is, what life is, in a way that those freedoms, the people who were not incarcerated on the inside, they felt incarcerated in their own ways through these restrictions and protocols and all the things that have affected the whole world. This is not one state or one country. This was global. And so many of us are still standing somewhere in the hero's journey inside ourselves, going to another level of it, bringing more messages of expansion and transcending any limits that we might feel like we're experiencing. And that is a force of change, right? Where some people went into the forces of fear and stayed there, which might have been keeping them still in their small, ordinary world that feels safer than the great big world out there, that there was this big unknown in the pandemic, right? Some people knew the fear, witnessed the fear, but having had the skills from the hero's journey, stood and grounded in what they had inside their own inner elixirs and knew that this would play out. That was a heroic soul's journey for all of humanity, and many are still in it. Even if they don't know it, they're still in it. Right? This has been a global hero's journey over the last few years, and we're still rising beyond that, right? Many people are at the different stages. Some people receive the invitation with the fear, and they still have yet to accept the invitation.
Right.
They might still be in the ordinary world trying to find a way to be safe and still fearing the great big world that's out there about all of this. And some people said, I'm stepping in. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm going to step in. And then there could be people at all stages of the journey right now as I'm saying this, because we're all in this in our own ways. Just like you and I received a parallel invitation before, the world got the parallel invitation simultaneously. About 7 to 8 billion of us got an invitation to the hero's journey.
Oh, so good.
In the last few years.
Yes. So Marie, we've talked a little bit about my return to the ordinary world in prison and now as a coach. Maybe I'd love you to share a little bit about how you answered your own call and where that took you in your own hero's journey.
Right. Well, these are good questions because this also elicits the elixir to come forth. You're inviting the liquid light
right.
of the elixir to flow forth from me. And, before we went through our initial call to the adventure, the first hero's journey, because we've had several, as you've said, I was a writer, and I am a writer, and I had published many books by that point. And what ended up being part of my healing process was doing a lot of journaling and writing some more, right? When you go through an ordeal, we all have different ways of coping and different ways of healing and integrating what's happening with us. And I deepened my writing skills, and they grew to other levels, right? Where you were the psychologist and you began teaching these classes, my writings got richer. My awareness grew deeper. Everything inside me was elevating to see the world through new degrees of perception that previously I just couldn't see. And I could understand things at a deeper level that I wasn't able to see before, because it expanded my sight. It expanded my understanding. It expanded my intuition. And so I did. I started writing inspired thoughts down, and I started publishing more books. I wrote a children's book series that's really actually for people of all ages. And then I, somewhere in there, was nudged to begin blogging. Right. And so I became a blogger, and I was writing inspired information from spirit, and I became a channel, and I started channeling. This isn't for everybody, but for some people listening who haven't heard that before. A lot of the greats, and I'm not saying I'm one of the greats, but a lot of people, when they go on this hero's journey, they access this universal wisdom. They access something bigger than themselves. And that could be in the field of science, right? It can be in the field of, innovation, medicine, a lot of the things that become innovative breakthroughs, right? And things that help humanity at large somehow came from an otherworldly source, something from spirit, something from the highest version of ourselves. That began to happen with me too. And I was a writer, so those went into writings. And then I started publishing those writings, and I began this blogging, and I began having sessions with clients and doing some life coaching, and, being again that kind of mentor like you were for the men in prison. I did this in my own way. And that is to this day still what I do. I bring through these inspired messages through my blogs and my websites and my video makings. And they're really the deepest end of the spectrum, or at least that I can conceive. It's deep into the spiritual world, the heroic soul's journey, not just the rising hero who's been on an adventure, which is powerful in and of itself. But when you start to integrate other dimensions and other higher awareness and a consciousness, like deepening your consciousness and connecting to a higher power and connecting to the source and the universal energies of the universe, right? Bringing that down into conversations with people, channeling that through, and supporting people as a life coach to also help them transcend the barriers that they experience in their lives, or the challenges. For many people who are attracted to my work, they're people who've already been in this journey for some time. They've already been on some hero's journeys, but sometimes there's something that's blocking them from going to the next level inside themselves. And often that's when I find that people find me. So between the two of us, we're helping a lot of people in humanity if they bounce into the kind of messages that we bring, either through these podcasts or my writings and my videos, or your work where you work now today, Lacy, right? or the film that we're still working on to bringing to life to touch people's lives with that kind of conversation about freeing an incarcerated world. There's so much that we bring, that we elevate people's lives from our presence and are the elixir of, it's not just belief, it's the elixir of knowing the expansion is meant for everyone.
Yes.
And when you have that inside ourselves, no matter what challenges we may still face in our lives, we know that expansion is meant for everyone, and that includes us. We're not done. We're just calling it out there of our adventures in this life. We still have many more chapters to experience. We still have many more adventures to go on, right? But I would say that we have caught, if you want to catch something, we've caught the joy, or maybe it's not joy, the passion for living life to its fullest. And I think Joseph Campbell, I don't know if I have the quote here in front of me, but he talks about, basically, if you're on a familiar path, if you know the path, then it's not your path, it's somebody else's. That a lot of other people have plans for you in your life.
Or I would almost say, if the path feels familiar and you know the path, then it's the path of your past.
Right.
Versus the new kind of path that could lead to the new version of you that you seek.
Correct.
That you are becoming.
Right. It's either your past or it's somebody else's agenda for your life.
Yes.
But what he's saying is the true hero, going on a true hero's journey, leaves the known world and the ordinary world and steps into the unknown. And yes.
Well, no, before I forget this thought, you were kind of trying to find the word. Like you said, is it joy? Is it passion for what's coming or what's new? I actually feel embracing. So the word, I don't know, is there a word like embracement? I don't think that's a word, but it's sort of, I have learned to embrace the unfoldment of the journey. I have learned to embrace the unfoldment of the journey. And not only have I learned to embrace it, but I've learned to be excited about embracing it.
Exactly. And I think excitement is another word that comes in here. After you've been through it and we've been through the swamps of swampiness in some of these aspects of the journey. It can be really arduous and it can be really trying of your soul. That's what it's designed for. And yet, you have to keep going through. You have to keep stepping into the unknown. You have to keep doing the things that you know are yours to do. And after you go through that and you feel the expansion, you have the elixir, you've risen in the resurrection, all of these things have come to pass. You know that there's more of that for you. It's not that once and done. And I felt the word willingness when you were talking about embracing and embracement. It's a willingness to embrace what is yours to journey. It's a willingness to become more of the best versions of you that you came to be. And yes, there are older parts of us that do die. We've talked about Wayne Dyer's language of dying while you're alive. These old, smaller, more limited, scared, fearful, doubtful, maybe shamed, there might be guilt that we're overcoming. Whatever it is, those energies and those emotions that are uncomfortable, we go through the storms of those inside ourselves. Nobody else is going to transcend that for us but us. And it typically is an event or, some ordeal that takes us into burning away and releasing, alchemizing all of those things to come out the other side, to get to a place where we would say, it's wild to me, Lacy, when we were in our first one, you'd think this isn't fair, or, how could one person be stretched so far? This is almost not humanly possible. The ego is telling us all the ways that this is not possible to come out of this alive, right? When
Absolutely.
You're really in the depths of an ordeal, sometimes those kinds of thoughts come to you. But when you transcend death, when you don't die in your journey, when you do transcend these things and you do live through and you call to yourself the skills that you need and the resources that you need and the mentors that you need so that you yourself can go into the cave, right? There was that approach to the inmost cave, and we go through the ordeal and you come out the other side and you go to the summit of your life's experiences, and you glean the rewards, right? And then you move into the resurrection, and you go through these stages and phases with yourself. You're still growing. You're still growing as you come outside the other side of that. There is this willingness to do it all over again, because you realize the riches, the true riches, are not of this world. They're otherworldly. And that's the piece that I speak about in my messages with people. I speak about the depths of our fears. I speak about the depths of the challenges and the limits we place on ourselves. I speak about the seduction in some ways of the ordinary world that might keep people trapped and thinking that that's all there is. And then I speak about the gifts that you glean in the journey when you liberate yourself from living in linear time and being trapped by your own egoic consciousness. I've even used the metaphor recently of the fishbowl of our experience, right? And some people, when they enter the hero's journey, when they're entering that unknown world and they feel that call to cross the threshold, they feel like a fish out of water. They don't belong in this new life that they don't understand. They don't even know what it is yet. But they also don't belong with the ordinary world and maybe the way they were showing up in the roles in their families before. They cannot go back to the smallness that they already were. But they're not comfortable moving forward because they don't know what's coming. They don't know if they're ready. That's all part of the hero's journey, that when you've been through one at least complete cycle, you know that whatever it is that you'll need in any future adventures will be drawn to you by yourself, because you're the hero that summons it in. And there's something so powerful when you begin to live. That's my language of multidimensionality. When you have everything you need anywhere in the universe at any point in time, past, present, future, of an insight or a skill or an awareness or a consciousness that you need, or a gift, you can access that. And that's a lot of what I bring to people, that brings this kind of higher level consciousness into the conversation, that spirituality, this connection to yourself as a soul who's traveled through time and has lots of stories and lots of these adventures. But now you're in a lifetime, I'm really bringing this to a close, at least in my experience, and what I do now today, how I bring the elixir to people and to humanity, is that we, in past lives, if some people can believe that, but in past lives, it's my experience that I have experienced people who've lived past lives, and I myself have as well. That's part of my language, a part of my experience. I'm now finally in a position to be the author of my adventures, whereas in other times I was not conscious enough to become the writer of my own experience or the creator of my own life. And that's what I ultimately seek to empower people, is that we are the creators of our lives. And you may use your own language with that, Lacy, with where you journeyed, right? You teach what you learned and what you know and what you experienced. I teach what I learned and what I knew and how I grew in my messages. And our messages, you have people that are attracted to your messages. And then there's probably people out there in their ordinary world and their ordinary lives that would not necessarily magnetize to the messages that you have or the messages that I have, right? They're not for everybody, but for those they're meant for, I'm the mentor, right? And those that they're not meant for, people find their mentors. And the beauty of bringing your unique elixir back from the hero's journey that we travel is that it is meant to enrich the community and the world at large. And we don't go seeking and looking for people who need our messages, right? We also have a sense of, we trust that the universe and that the magnetism of the universe will bring us together with whoever needs to hear the messages that we're ready to share.
Yeah.
Same thing with Whole Soul School and Foundation. It's still in its beginning stages. It's still just being seeded with the elixir that we have and that we know, and through more of the messengers that will come, right? And we are trusting. I will say again, Whole Soul School and Foundation is an example of a hero's journey.
Right.
It's not a person, but it's a thing. It's a mission, and it's a vision. It's an idea. It's a consciousness. And it's still going through its layers of leaving the ordinary world and trusting that if you plant the seeds and you keep watering them, people will come, right? It will grow. The resources will find Whole Soul School and Foundation to help elevate it to the position of being a bigger broadcasting company. So it is still in its own hero's journey, its stages, and we're witnessing that as well. Right? It doesn't always happen overnight. It's not that you decide today that you're going to be the hero of your own journey and tomorrow you've been through all 12 stages. I actually wouldn't recommend that. You need more time. We need more time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a longer answer, but it lifts off the page in my world. It's not just just an answer to an interview type question. It's a living energy, what we each do.
Well, I think the hero's journey is a living energy. It's easy to go to these movies and see it in linear time. You know, it's easy to read it in a book.
And it wraps up in an hour.
It wraps up in 2 hours, right? And then we are kind of looking at it as if it's separate from us because it's on a screen and we are in the seat, right? But when you in like almost like a holographic way, you know, that's what I think you and I do here is we share our story. It isn't just a story. I mean, we are in it. We are live. We are live in our life. We are live in our hero's journey. And I think that's what you mean when you say it just really lifts off the page.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. I want to just kind of maybe round us out. Because most of these podcasts, we talk about some very real examples in movies, which help people relate.
Yes.
So I'd love to just highlight a couple elixir type examples, right? So we've already sort of said that the elixir can be that the hero brings back to the ordinary world. It can be physical, right? It could be food. It could be life itself, right? It could be physical. Like one author or one person I read referenced the Hunger Games. I'm not very familiar with that film series, but that's the kind of elixir where life and food were brought back to the ordinary world. Or some physical could mean safety and peace, such as kind of in Harry Potter. You know, Harry Potter brings sort of peace to the world after Voldemort's death, essentially, right? Or it could be friendship and a physical reunion, such as like Toy Story, right? And then it can be also the elixir could be emotional or spiritual, such as hope. We talked about hope, and the Star Wars series is especially the one called A New Hope, right? It's about bringing hope back to the ordinary world. Or it could be a renewed sense of marriage and family. There's a lot of movies that talk about that, and the one that this author references is Back to the Future. So, and finally, I want to end with our good friend Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, because that is probably the best example of the hero's journey that we've talked about the most. So, you know, the Dorothy who awakens in her bed back in Kansas is very different from the girl who left that black and white world, right?
Right.
She has returned from her journey with the self-assurance necessary to live fully.
Right.
And the knowledge to do anything. I mean, she picked up so much on her journey. But the biggest piece of knowledge that she came home with, as we all know, is that we've got to believe in ourselves.
Right.
And that is the elixir that she brings home. So Dorothy's statement that she will never leave home again is not really to be taken at face value. Right? Really, she is referring to kind of her own soul with its new self-confidence and understanding. So she means, she doesn't necessarily mean I'm never going to leave Kansas again or the farm or Annie M. She knows that now she has all the tools inside of her, that she takes her soul wherever she goes. She takes her transformed self wherever she goes. And she will never be apart from that again.
Right.
And that's powerful.
It's super powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much just in that. That could be a whole podcast. And maybe we should do that. I mean, more in depth now that we've covered a lot of this. That might be an idea for the future.
Yeah.
But what I feel is also that she not that she'll never leave home again, but I also felt in all that you just said, she's not going to run from the adventure again. She won't run from the invitation again.
Yes.
Right? That's also because she was kind of swept away and into this other world. But now that she can turn and embrace.
But she was running when she was swept away.
Running.
That's what you're getting at, right? She was running away from home because it was boring, because it wasn't fulfilling, because she believed there's got to be something at the other side of a rainbow. Right. Exactly. So she was running.
Exactly. And so she's the phrase "never going to leave home again," right? Is more like I will never run away again. I won't run from what is mine to do again, because I have the power inside me to transcend anything, right? And I take on this journey willingly, like you said, with the embracing energy, right? Because she knows there are other lions and tigers and bears to meet. There are other tin men and lions and scarecrows to meet. And they enriched her life immensely. And she knows there will be more chapters. She trusts.
Yeah.
She trusts. And there's something so powerful in that. So again, we're hoping to seed this in people's awareness wherever you are in your journey. You might be in the middle of it. You might be in the thick of it. You might be in the swamp of it. You might be in the ordeal of it. But there always is this moment in the return. You are changed. Things do happen. Sometimes sorrow is part of your experience, sometimes loss or grief, all those really challenging emotions and experiences and events in our lives. But if we are meant to transcend that and come through all of that, right, we do. And it's meant for all of us, and the power is inside. And I wanted to wrap up. Thank you, Lacy, for sharing those examples and bringing it again to life through some of those characters. And I want to return to some thoughts from goalcast.com that they just said so succinctly. This author was writing, and they said, what can we learn from the hero's journey? And this is this author saying this. At the time of writing this article, I'm in the UK visiting my family for the first time in 18 months. And as I walked down paths I'd walked throughout my childhood, I was struck by how much I've changed over the years. And then this author reflects on this passage from T.S. Eliot's poem, Little Gidding, comes to mind. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Right? It's deep when people...
So good.
Right, in these artistic ways, they're speaking to the symbology of the soul. That's like the soul's language. Let me read that one more time. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Dorothy is feeling that when she returns to Kansas, right? She's not going to stop exploring. She's going to answer future calls, right? She is where she started, but she's not the same.
Right.
And she knows herself, this new version of herself for the first time. And then this author, again at goalcast.com, goes on to say, I reflected on the notion of coming full circle, to begin a journey outwardly or inwardly before finding yourself back at the beginning, transformed. In spiritual traditions, the circle is a powerful symbol of timelessness, death and rebirth, totality and wholeness. Aptly, the 12 steps of the hero's journey are depicted as a circle. It's not a coincidence. What can we learn from the hero's journey? In a way, it is similar to the writer's journey. Above all else, it's a reminder that we each within us have a purpose, a quest, and a mission in this life that can and will invoke our truest potential. The path isn't easy. There are many, many challenges along the way, but at the right time, people and situations will come to our aid. If you're able to confront the mission head on, right, and step into that journey, right, Lacy, and take these bold steps along the way, just like all of the heroes of fiction and, I would say, real life before you. Shakespeare's characters to Luke Skywalker and Rey from the universe brought to us by George Lucas, then you will be transformed, and then you can return to where you started, reborn, ready to share your gifts and your lessons with the world. That's the elixir. The lessons, right?
Right.
The gift of your presence, the power of your presence, and the things you now know that is in your energy field as awareness, as courage, as strength, as fortitude, as all those things. I love how, that was pretty amazing that Joseph Campbell was able to distill all of those things, those descriptors, into one word, the elixir.
Yeah.
There's a magical quality to the understanding of an elixir. And I think we're still discovering what that is, and that it may know no bounds, right? We may continue to surprise ourselves as a human consciousness that continues to evolve as a collective and as individuals living our everyday life. It's the macro and the micro. But the ego is what puts limits on us. And it's been a part of us that we have needed to keep ourselves safe in a dangerous world. But somehow the hero, the rising hero who goes on this adventure, transcends the fear of danger and knows that it has within itself everything that it needs. That's part of the elixir, a big part, and the powerful presence that lives inside us all, if we'll just be willing to accept the invitations that I think are there in all of our lives right now. We don't have to look too far. Where is the hero's journey inviting you, right?
Da-na-na-na.
Right? It is the
or
question.
Drum roll, right?
It is the question. So we have more to explore in Joseph Campbell's work. Of course, in the Rising Hero's Journey, there are so many aspects of this that we will continue to talk about in our Fireside Chats to come. But for anybody finding this particular podcast, you're saying, wait, this is stage 12? What happened to 1 through 11? You can go back in the archives, and people who are listening to this, it would be interesting. I've never done this, but to listen to 1 through 12. We've done many of these, 12-month type conversations with these themes and these focuses. So you can go back and you can journey with us in all the breadcrumbs we've laid and have a more coherent journey, if you will, something where it puts it all together, more integrated. Whereas if you just say, well, I'll listen to 5 and I'll listen to 7 and I'll listen to 12 over here, it's not a complete picture.
And I'm thinking too, Marie, we haven't talked about this, but as you're talking, I'm almost wanting to see, as we round out this particular 12 months, we will sit down and sort of talk about where we want to go from here. But I would invite our listeners, and I know there are many listeners out there that have listened to the last 12 months and more of our podcasts. And I would almost like to ask our listeners to feel free to write us. I'm not even sure if there's a comment section on our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org.
They can write us through the contact page, but they can comment on the videos themselves.
Okay.
And this is all part of the seeding a bigger message and voice for the Fireside Chats for the Whole Soul is more engagement, more participation.
Yeah,
more
so
of a
I was going to
community.
say, if you are a devout listener, so to speak, and you have found what we've said important to you, and you would like us to elaborate on anything that we've talked about over the last 12 months, I would invite you to contact us via the contact page and let us know what you would like to hear us speak more about.
Right. People can write more like a private message to us through the contact page, or if they want to post a public, like, I'd love to hear more about this, or I wish you guys would talk about this, or, suggestions, if you will. And we're also going to go inside and listen for how we want to bring this journey to life in new ways and in a deeper way that people can apply these messages and this wisdom in their own life. We grow as we see these messages in these conversations and when we do the research for some of our calls and our conversations.
Yeah.
So again, I just want to I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank you, Lacy, for joining me.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Joseph Campbell for giving us this language and laying this out for all of us in a way that it's built to breathe. His messages expand and contract, right? It's like a breath. And so he's given us a lot to work with. He's given us a language. Somebody is going to take this to a whole other level. Maybe it's Whole Soul School and Foundation is going to maybe expand on the work of Joseph Campbell. I know that many people have. There's the movie Finding Joe that we've referenced before. And so there's many people taking these messages and living it in a new way. And that invites a whole lot of creativity and innovation, even for our listeners. Who knows who's going to be touched by these podcasts, by Joseph Campbell's work, by the concept of a rising hero within. And as my good friend Paul Panzica talks about, the heroic soul's journey, right? But sometimes it's just like a podcast like this or a conversation like this that sparks somebody's creative life force and they become the force for change. And so that's what we're here to do, is to be those catalysts of change and those empowerers of self-awareness and change and positive change. And we invite you to visit with us on our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. We do invite you, if you're touched by these conversations and the work that we do, we invite you to make a donation. No donation is too small or too large. And also to visit with us on your favorite social media platforms. I find that some podcasts that I know I want to listen to and I just can't get to because there's not enough time. It's nice to listen via an audio podcast. We're on Buzzsprout, but that means that it actually feeds into very well-known audio podcasting platforms like Spotify or Apple iTunes. So we invite you to find us and listen in whatever ways are going to best empower you. And we will see you again next month for another new expanded conversation from Lacy and I in our Fireside Chats. And we aim to have some more podcasts in the next few months as well, more messengers. This was a peak time for a lot of people right now. They've been busy in their heroes' journeys, and we have some podcasts scheduled and getting scheduled for the coming months. So blessings to everyone. We'll see you soon.